David, first of all, I was so excited to do this interview because I've been a fan of yours since I was a kid. I mean, 10 Things I Hate About You is maybe one of my favorite movies ever. And then recently with Oppenheimer, you've been having an incredible career. I just saw Deliver Me from Nowhere last night. So,
Oh
like,
yeah.
you're everywhere, and I'm a huge fan. So, it is really an honor to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure.
I enjoyed the movie a lot. It's funny and weird and gritty. So Caleb, great work. You took on a lot of roles throughout this. So I guess I want to get into the first question, which is just, you know, writing and directing and starring. I mean, there's so many things. What did you find the most challenging part of this? And maybe were there some areas that you learned that you might have been better than you previously thought you were in certain roles, and maybe some areas that you're like, ooh, this is challenging?
Well, yeah, I would say that writing, I enjoy writing because you can go outside and walk around the block and take a break and think about it and kind of do things at your own pace. And editing is similar in that way, where you can work on something and then go outside and take a break and think about it. And directing is not like that. Directing is challenging because of the time pressure, especially doing an indie. So directing is like you have to make a decision now, and people are waiting on you, and there's all kinds of externalities and locations and things like that. So directing is I think it's just naturally challenging, especially in indie and doing what we were doing, which was ambitious on the ground in LA. The acting was really the most fun stuff for the most part. It was an energetic shoot, so I think David and I were both exhausted most of the time. But that was the fun stuff. That was like the icing on the cake when I could be in a scene across from David Krumholtz and just let it go and let loose.
Yeah, I mean that David, right now you're obviously again, I just talked about that career, resurgence. I don't know, I feel like that sort of implies something worse, but like you are in a lot recently and with
Oh
Supergirl
yeah.
coming up. But now and you also take the time like with Lousy Carter a few years ago. And this, you take these odd indie projects. And I do wonder, it's like, what do you take away? Like what's your favorite part about being in these smaller roles?
Well, I see work as work, and I see as always just a chance to get out of the house. I don't like being unemployed, and I'm a workaholic. Now, that doesn't mean I say yes to everything that's sent my way. I don't like covering the same ground too often. I have done that in studio films, because, I'm a dad and I need to pay the bills. But I find that in indie films, I'm offered, roles that expand what I'm capable of, challenge me, stretch me, and I just believe that that's the way, if you will, for me as an artist. That's the artist's way, is to stretch. And indie movies have afforded me that opportunity more than once. I love getting I love the pressure of indie films. I love running out of time and making things happen. There's a greater sense of accomplishment when you nail a scene, with 15 minutes of light left to shoot the scene than 3 days of shooting the same scene. I don't like overworking scenes. And so indies are way more spontaneous. There's a frenetic energy that I feed off of. I drink a lot of espresso, and so I kind of love that high, if you will, admittedly, of the pressure and the ticking clock, which you don't get often on film. So I need to make independent films. They make me feel alive. I'm also a fan of independent film. I especially now, there's so much that's being done in the studio world that is broad and high concept. And sometimes I think people just need to see a little story, and you can actually accomplish a lot more profundity by keeping a story small. And those are the kinds of movies I grew up on, and that I've always had an affinity towards. And so yeah, I never delineate, I never say, well, this is an independent movie and for that reason I can't do it. If I have time, and even if it's 3 days, I'm working. I'll go anywhere and do what I need to do if I feel passionate enough about it. I just did 5 days on a movie in Australia, flew all the way to Australia to do, a smallish role just because, again, it gets me out of the house, gets me to Australia. Who wouldn't do that, Um, so, look, I just feel so privileged to do this at all that the idea of discarding any project for reasons of vanity or what I'm worth and what my value, how are people going to, I find that silly. I owe it to the privilege of being able to do this to just do almost everything I possibly can.
That's, a really incredible response. Just this last weekend, I finished shooting a senior thesis film that I've been working on forever. And I wrote it and I starred in it. And I realized like there's so much difficulty in writing based off of like your experiences. And obviously, Caleb, you draw from this and that. And so I think I related to the film a lot because of the scrappiness of it, like that you just talked about, David. And Caleb, I am just so curious, like, how do you get into this role that's like kind of similar to you in some ways? And like, what parts of you are you putting in, and what parts are you, bringing from just an external perspective?
Yeah, I think that it's something, it's a probably a project by project thing. I think everything is a little bit different. And on this one, there's obviously this whole thing about my likeness and my, supposed resemblance to certain superheroes that is in there that's based off of me. The character for the most part is quite different from me. It is based on some people I know, and especially someone who I'm very close to. So I think that was helpful because it was grounded by uh you know by bringing in other people in my life when I was writing this character. And yeah, I think you try to serve the story as much as possible. That's how I approach it, is you honor the story and you do what the story asks you to do, if that makes sense. So I try to approach it from that way. And if I'm led down a certain path by the muse, then I'll try to follow that. And maybe that's a dead end and I circle back and I go in a different direction. But I did find it, this is actually the first time that I really was doing something that was more based on personal experience. I've written many, many scripts, and some have been optioned, some were made, different things, but they were mostly, it was mostly stuff that wasn't about my own experiences. And this was fun. It was gratifying for that to be able to infuse a story with my own observations too, right? Just things that I would see everyday life and in conversations I would hear and things I would hear from friends. And I would say it's gratifying, and it kind of makes you everyday life very rich too, because you're just going outside and you hear a line from something someone says, and it sparks something, and you try to write things down and stay connected to everything around you.
I think the Superman thing is obviously yeah, I love that resemblance. I thought that was a really interesting thing, and I wondered when that came into the process. But also, just like kind of a side note, I mean, David, obviously you have this connection to Superman now. Like when you guys were filming this, were you already cast in Supergirl, or like did that come after? I mean, I
Yeah.
that had to have been
So,
an interesting moment.
yeah, Supergirl came after, well after. And yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm sort of in this Superman world because in this weird, that's like it's like a message or a sign from God or something, because I did Forelock, then I booked Supergirl, luckily, and then the very next movie I made was a movie called Mr. Irrelevant that is starring David Cornsweet.
Right.
So I
Oh
can't
yeah.
escape the Superman thing, which is great. I'm not complaining, but it's strange that those three things, happened almost at the same time.
In the past, I was reading a fantastic interview you did with RogerEbert.com where you talked about how being an actor, it's like being in a circus where you move from project to project and like from town to town. Some things will stick with you and some things won't. I do wonder with each project, is there something that you try to take away from them? And with Forelock, what was something maybe unique about this experience, as you stay with this circus and move to the next one? I'm just curious about how those things link.
Wow, that's a great question. I think, I've worked with a lot of actors who create suffering for their art. And I have learned that there's a natural level of suffering that happens as a result of being an actor specifically, or being an artist in general, living that life, that lifestyle. So I don't create it. And I cannot not have fun on a project. I don't care what it is. I'm precocious. This is fun. I'm lucky to be doing something fun. It's play. I have to remember that it's work and it's play. It's like you would hate to find out that your favorite baseball player hated playing baseball the whole time, right? Because you're like, dude, you're getting paid a crazy amount of money and you get to play a game for a living. It's like that. I have to keep that perspective. And yeah, I try to make friends. I don't need to make friends. Sometimes there's none to make on each project, but as long as I'm having fun, and if I have to make my own fun, if I have to create fun rather than suffering, I'd much rather create some fun. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I love that whole idea and having fun. And so on
Fun is
the
a terrible word for fun. The
sorry.
word fun, it's because fun is actually a profound concept, but the word fun is such a crappy word, for fun. It's like fun. It's just three letters and it's weird and sounds weird.
Yeah.
So revelry,
Okay.
is a better
Yeah.
word.
I like
Mhm.
that. I like that. That's great. And so I guess, not speaking of fun, because that's a boring word, but on the film balances, it's a dark comedy and it's like a crime thriller. And so to the both of you, obviously, because Caleb, you did a lot behind the scenes, and David, you were also the EP. I wonder, like, how do you guys create the balance of you don't want to go too dark and you don't necessarily just want to be a straight comedy because you need some drama in it? How do you
Mm.
balance those things? And what are the challenges of trying to strike the right chord?
Well, it's not alchemy, it's not a science. I think I know this sounds weird, but I try to let the project be what it wants to be. I really try to like receive what it is about the story that needs to happen and not try to like tinker too much with the calculations of genre and things like that. But it's a consideration, and David was really helpful as an actor and collaborator and EP on set because those questions do come up of like, okay, well, we're coming from this other scene in the script, now we're filming this scene, and I think that we need to make sure that we do hit the humor in this because we're coming from all this other action and drama. And so that those things are practical considerations for sure. Um, I think that being said, we wanted to play loose and free and just let this be kind of a wild ride. And there's a caper element that comes into play towards the end of the movie. There's a sting element. There's plenty of dynamic action. I had David running all over Los Angeles in this. I was squatting all over Los Angeles in this. Um, but we wanted to, I think dark comedy is probably the best description in terms of genre, or dark comedy thriller maybe. But that's kind of a wide gamut. There's a lot that can go into that.